I'm slightly more prepared for this video. For those of you who tuned into my last video, I did a 2024 camera reveal. So you learned in that video that I purchased the Fuji X-E1, a recent eBay purchase. I'm going to talk a little bit about that camera. I'm just going to share my experience. So full disclosure, I'm not here to sell you cameras, to sell you on the idea of cameras, or to sway you or influence you in any way. I am just a camera nerd, a photo enthusiast, and I like to make photographs. So I think of cameras as tools, and recently I'm taking a deep dive into trying out several different tools to see how they inspire me, to see how I can utilize them, and to get, this video doesn't really have any format, so I'm just kind of shooting from the hip here. I just don't have any luck with kind of scripting things out or thinking about these videos too in depth, because what ends up happening is my perfectionism really starts to come through. I do take after take, and yeah, it just gets annoying very quickly and exhausting and draining. So I am going to just do my best to stay on topic, which is the X-E1. I absolutely love this camera. My cats are insane. It is an all-day battle with these kitties. What was I saying? Okay. I absolutely love the Fuji X-E1. I've spent several days with this camera. I've shot with it a lot. I love its form factor. I love that it's pretty much pocketable, especially with this lens that I got. I absolutely adore this lens. This is something that is such a good pair with the Fuji. They're just kind of meant for each other, I believe. And I also really enjoy that we got some manual aperture action here. And if you can hear that goodness, setting up the shots and being able to stop down and manually set the aperture. Which brings me to my first reason for kind of loving this camera and the Fuji system is the tactile aspects of it. There are all these buttons, manual settings. So in this case, you can manually set shutter speed. You can manually set the exposure compensation. And that's a really, really great feature for me in particular. I mean, there are ways in which you can set things to auto. You can get your shutter on auto, but I like to have manual shutter and set that manually. And then let's go ahead and adapt this lens. Hey y'all, Editing Inea here. Just to let you know, there are timestamps below if you're looking for something specific. Anyway, back to the video. Okay, so we can also, as I was saying, set the aperture, but if we wanted to have that in auto, we can have all settings in auto, or you can do what's known as aperture priority by having everything else auto. You would only change the aperture, or we can do shutter priority, which we would only change the shutter, and then the aperture would be in auto, so the aperture would adjust depending on our shutter. Those are some of the like technical things, or just kind of how I set up. I typically like to have full manual control, so I'm usually, and this actually locks, so you got to engage the little button. So I like to pick all my things, and then I'll stay at a fixed ISO of 400 or 200, just to kind of mimic the experience of film, like I was shooting with some 400 speed film. There's also functions to choose manual focus, continuous focus, and then single shot. So I'm typically in manual, and what I really love about this camera is even though you are in manual, you still have access to the autofocus button here. So if you do need to kind of pull your focus very quickly, but you still want to adjust things manually, let me pull my aperture up. So let's give ourselves a subject here. So if I wanted to focus on that, for example, I can use this back button, autofocus, and it'll focus still, even in manual mode, which is great. Or you can press this button in, you get a nice zoomed in image, and you can kind of adjust that as you see fit until you get a sharp image. Both of those ways are effective. And I used both of those methods of focusing. If I'm trying to get a shot quick, if I'm doing some street photography and I just really need to focus on a subject very quickly, I'll use that back autofocus button. But if I can take my time, and I do like to use this focus assist. And I think there are different focus assist modes. If you click and hold, you can see you can use focus peaking, and then there's standard. So the standard is you just get a zoom, and if you scroll the click wheel, you actually get really zoomed in, and you can really dial in your focus. Got to have kind of steady hands, and I'm in an awkward position, but you get the idea. So these are many reasons why I absolutely love this camera. I know this is going to sound cliche because a lot of Fuji people say this, but it really slows down the whole process a bit to really be intentional about shooting. I love both though. I like to have something that has good continuous autofocus, eye autofocus, which this doesn't have eye autofocus. So there's a time and a place, you know. Would I take this on a professional shoot? It really depends on what the shoot is. Like if I was shooting something high-paced, sports, maybe a fashion show, maybe something where I'm like an event photographer, not necessarily. I may have it as a B cam just to kind of capture some moments, but I think because the autofocus leaves something to be desired, it's pretty slow. There are reasons why I would not use this. So I guess that would be a con. So maybe I can kind of organize my thoughts in a final sort of pros and cons thing, but I'm just kind of gonna say things as I go, or as things come to mind. So where does this camera really thrive? For me, where I found it to really thrive is when I can kind of take my time, go on photo walks. I've been doing a lot of street photography, kind of just taking little walks around my neighborhood, capturing images, maybe go on a walk with my partner and my pets. And I've really started to utilize things like zone focusing rather than relying on an autofocus or trying to sit there and just and really zoom in and kind of get focus for every single shot. Film has really broadened my horizons, and again, I'm going to dedicate an entire video to just film photography because I have so much to say about it. But it's broadened my horizons in terms of really stopping down the aperture. I think when I got into photography and what my eye was really drawn to were a lot of what we're drawn to is blurry background, having a bokeh. And so shallow depth of field is like a must. You know, when I looked at YouTube videos, I would kind of qualify them or grade them or think that their quality was good or professional based off of the shallow depth of field. And I realize now that that is, while that's very cool and shallow depth of field is definitely a stylistic choice, that it's not always appropriate, you know? And of course, YouTube will have you thinking you need ND filters and you need to always shoot wide open. And there's this whole sort of philosophy about just always kind of keeping that blurry background. Well, while I can kind of understand where that comes from and the problem solving that goes into keeping a wide open aperture via ND filters, variable NDs and things like that, I think that it can be a little limiting and short-sighted. And what film has really taught me, especially things like the Sunny 16 rule, which again, I'll get into in another video about film, is that it's okay to be in those higher f-stops. It's okay to close down. Being in f16, f12, f8 are absolutely beautiful, clear, and deep. Finding a focus range and setting up a zone so you kind of know what's in focus past a certain point. And the Fuji has this wonderful feature where when you're using manual focus, it tells you how many feet. I have it set up in feet. Some people may like meters, but I'm American and we have erroneously been taught feet instead of the metric system. That's another conversation. But as you can see, 5 feet, 7 feet, 10 feet, 15 feet. And if I'm stopped down, you know, which I'm wide open at 2.8, you can't really, it's a little too dark in my room, but yeah, you can see that. So what this is going to let me know, because this is relatively close, I'm very close to this subject. But let's assume that my subject is far away, which you can't really see right now. And what I would do to set my zone focusing is, you know, sweet spot is like right around, I don't know, 12 feet. So 12 feet and beyond to infinity, I'll know that that area is in focus if I'm pretty stopped down, if I'm in my f11, f16, and I'll know that anything in that focus range is in focus, and I can kind of do what's known as fishing and kind of wait for people to move through the scene or wait for something interesting to happen. And I'm not just sitting there just struggling to find focus and to look at everything. I think, again, because my introduction to photography, at least this round of photography, I've been interested in photography my whole life, but this round of digital photography with my Sony a6000 I bought in 2020, I think I've been trying to mimic eye autofocus, which is extremely difficult to do, if not impossible to do manually. So rather than trying to nail this really shallow depth of field and then capture a very crisp eye autofocus image, I've really been exploring closing down my aperture so more is in focus. There's less shallow depth of field, there's more depth of field rather. And so I have more of an area to play with of things that are in focus. So that's just kind of, you know, I might be getting a little off track here, maybe not. This is all applies to photography, but these are just things that I'm learning because I'm getting out of the Sony system, for example. And I'm not trying to throw shade at Sony. I was using cult a lot when I was talking about Sony in my last video, and I hope people recognize that I mean that humorously, and I mean that you know, I'm kind of poking fun at a lot of this YouTube culture that kind of reinforces this idea that we got to kind of stay in some type of lane. And yeah, I just kind of want to call that out and be aware of that and be aware of the ways in which I also can kind of be very brand loyal and not think outside of just kind of whatever system I'm on. So Fuji has been a gateway to shooting on film cameras, which I love. This Camp Snap, which is going to get its own video, has really broadened my horizons. This is a wonderful little point and shoot camera. There's nothing too fancy about it. It's a fixed focal length. You know, you have less control, and the photos that were coming out of that Camp Snap really inspired me to be less concerned about shallow depth of field, to play with images that are more, everything is in focus, and yeah, and just kind of, it's all symbiotic. It's all relative to my photo journey, and just kind of And I think that the overall point I'm trying to make is that these different camera bodies will inspire different types of photography out of me. And the Fuji E1 has really opened me up to different styles of photography. I want to talk about the film sims, and I also want to give you my recipe that I've been working with at the end of the video. So please stick around for that, because I really love the colors that I'm getting out of this. I did try to shoot raw for just like a split second. I think I messed with raw very little, and I realized very quickly that that wasn't what I was trying to do with this camera. If I'm gonna shoot raw, I'm gonna shoot my 5D Mark II, I'm gonna shoot my Sony a6600. I can use the raw image and I can really tweak those photos. I could really get what I want out of them. I can squeeze every last bit of dynamic range out of them. And that's not really what I was looking for with the Fuji. So I really just wanted something straight out of camera. I wanted to get a look. I wanted to shoot some photos and be like, cool, this is it. And I even found myself trying to edit the JPEGs a little bit at first, but then I started recognizing that the film sims really help you to look for what is going to really make those film sims sing and thrive. So they kind of inform what I shot and kind of the colors I shot, what I was drawn to with lines, with composition. And so it did get to the point, as I got comfortable shooting with this camera, where I am doing little to no editing on the JPEGs. Maybe I'm straightening some of my horizons because I'm kind of a stickler about that. Maybe I'm just pulling down the highlights a little bit, or maybe I'm bumping the exposure or lowering the exposure, but we're talking about slight moves here. And I love that aspect of it. So definitely a pro in that regard is the film sims, something I was really interested in getting into. And yes, I kind of have found a recipe that I really like. I kind of looked around online. I tried some things from the blogs, from the Fuji blogs. There's a lot out there to simulate things like Kodak Gold, to simulate Portra 400. So like very known and popular film stocks. There's a lot of recipes out there, but you know, they're just, for me, they were good starting points because I eventually just kind of tweaked it to my own personal tastes and needs. And again, I'll provide what I'm shooting. If you like the colors, if you kind of like what I'm doing with my JPEGs, then you'll have that to play around with. And I hope it will inspire some photos for you. So definite big pro there is the JPEGs. And I just got this panic attack that my microphone wasn't on. Are you on? Oh my gosh. Guys, I swear to God. Is everything recording? Whew, okay. So JPEGs, definite plus, kind of gets me shooting in a different way, using zone focusing, stopping down, and also shooting during the day. I mean, that was another thing that kind of was drilled into my brain in the YouTube sphere, is like, oh, you don't want to shoot at noon, you don't want to shoot in the harsh light, and you want to diffuse light, and come on, people, let's just experiment. Like, why do we have to, let's complicate it later, right? Like, we can complicate it later. Like, let's just go out and have fun. I've been trying to rid myself of a lot of these rules that I feel like I've accumulated just from, you know, being on YouTube and hearing every YouTuber talk about ND filters and shallow depth of field and don't go out at noon. And like, there's just all of these rules. And frankly, I am really trying to break free of that mentality. If those rules and restrictions work for you, more power to you. I love limitations. I love setting restrictions, like having a limited ISO range, having a limited, you know, manual things. That's why I like the Fuji system. But you should set restrictions that really honor your process and not necessarily rules that other people have come up with. Holy crap. Okay, have I said enough? Oh, I'm gonna show you my film sim. Yeah, let's go ahead and do it. We'll just do it right now. I wanna do the film sim. So for those of you who do shoot Fuji and are interested, I'll show you my settings to kind of get photos that look like mine. I'll just quickly go through everything in the menu. So currently my ISO is at 400. This is going to be the best for daytime shooting, just FYI. These things they're not global. They don't apply to night shooting when you gotta bump up the ISO, you gotta change the color temperature. There's just a lot you gotta figure out for low light, for nighttime, and I'll let you guys just kind of explore that on your own. Just be forewarned that this is gonna do best with a lot of light coming into the sensor, i.e. daytime. So ISO's at 400. Image size, I do large 3/2. Image quality, I do fine, no need for raw. Dynamic range, I'm at 200%. Film simulation, I use Pro Neg High. It just looked really good for me. Film simulation bracket, we don't need to talk about that, maybe another video. White balance, I have it set to auto right now, but typically I put it on fine, which is daytime balance. And then for my white balance shift, I'll go over 2 red and then -2 blue. For whatever reason, that just gives me awesomeness. I don't know how else to explain it. Colors at 0. Sharpness is -2 because I don't want any digital sharpening. Highlight tone is 0. Shadow tone is 0. Noise reduction is -2. Again, I don't want post-processing, so -2 basically turns it off, I believe. And I think that's it. All right, so that's my film recipe. I hope y'all like it. If you do end up shooting with it, please shoot me a message, send me a DM on Instagram, follow me. Let's share photos, let's share stories. And yeah, I'm just stoked. I want to like continue making videos like this. I'm trying to kind of keep this. What is that? What does that sound? Just heard something beep. I've got so many electronics around here. Is this still recording? Okay. Are you still recording? Okay, I think we're good. In conclusion, the X-E1 is a wonderful camera, and I would highly recommend it, especially for people who want to slow their process down, who want to be intentional about their shooting, who want to kind of take their time and really simulate the experience of shooting film. And I'm going to talk about my experience shooting actual film, analog 35mm film, in another video. And please comment down below if there's anything else you want me to cover. I've gotten some requests to cover some the camp snap, which I totally intend to do. But in the meantime, ask away in the comments, follow me on Instagram at TrueLouPhoto, and go out and make some photos. I would be really stoked to see them, to share that experience with you. And that's gonna be all from me for now. We'll see you in the next one. Peace. Thumbnail. All right, did we make a video? I think that went down without a hitch. The animals didn't even bother me. I gotta feed them now. They're probably very hungry. Oh, so when I set up this video earlier, it was freaking snowing outside. It was snowing outside and it looked beautiful in here. It was all overcast. I had this nice lighting set up, and then of course the sun came out, which is not a bad thing, but if you just spent a freaking hour setting up your shot for an overcast day, the sun was not a welcome friend for me right now. But oh well. I'm still going to come into the shot and pretend that I'm taking off my jacket because that scene won't make sense unless I do that.